They say the farm is starving, but it is us who work until our bones scream. They think hunger makes us weak. They think shame breaks us.
Back to work!
But every humiliation, every drop of sweat, is planting something far more dangerous. And when it grows, we will pray for mercy they never gave.
Get back to work!
There are moments in history that never make it into the books. Moments of quiet rebellion, of brilliant minds working in the shadows, of revenge so subtle it looked like accident. This is one of those stories. This is Sarah's story. Picture Louisiana in 1855, the air thick with humidity and the sickly sweet smell of burning cane. The Belmont plantation stretched across 3,000 acres of rich soil, and at its heart stood the sugar mill, a beast of iron and fire that turned cane into white gold. Master Richard Belmont owned it all, the land, the mill, the people. 247 souls, to be exact. Sarah was one of them. At 50 years old, Sarah's hands bore the scars of 36 years working the sugar, first in the fields, cutting cane until her back screamed. Then, after she lost 3 fingers to a harvesting accident, they moved her to the boiling house. The Belmont family thought they were being merciful. They had no idea they were creating their own destruction. The winter of 1854 hit the Belmont plantation like God's own fist. A frost came early, killing half the tobacco crop. Then the levee broke, flooding 200 acres of prime cane. The riverboat carrying their refined sugar to New Orleans sank in a storm, taking $60,000 worth of product to the bottom of the Mississippi. Master Belmont started drinking harder. His eyes got that wild, desperate look that Sarah had learned to fear in white men. That's when the masks arrived. They came in wooden crates stamped with Portuguese markings. Máscaras de Flandres, the overseer called them. Flanders masks. Iron muzzles designed to fit over a human face, with a metal plate that pressed against the tongue and a lock at the back of the head. The message was clear. You cannot eat what you cannot put in your mouth. Sarah watched from the boiling house window as Master Belmont gathered everyone in the yard that February morning. His voice carried across the frozen ground. "Times are hard," he announced, swaying slightly, whiskey on his breath even at dawn. "I've been too lenient, too generous with rations. From now on, anyone caught stealing cane will wear the mask, day and night, for a month." The silence that followed was thick as molasses. Sarah felt something break inside her that morning. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet snap, like a thread pulled too tight. She'd endured so much. The beatings, the separation from her children, sold off one by one when Master Belmont needed cash. The nights in the boiling house when the heat was so intense she thought her lungs would melt. But this was different. This was cruelty for cruelty's sake. The first person to wear a mask was a boy named Marcus, 14 years old, caught with cane juice on his lips. They locked that iron cage around his face, and Sarah watched him try not to cry. She watched him for 3 days, unable to eat, barely able to drink water poured through the bars. On the 4th day, he collapsed in the fields. They took the mask off then, left him in the sick house to recover or die. Master Belmont didn't much care which. That's when Sarah started watching, really watching. She'd worked the boiling house for 16 years. She knew every stage of sugar production like she knew her own heartbeat. The cane juice flowing into the first copper kettle, called the grand, the careful heating, the skimming of impurities, the transfer to the flambeau, then the sirop, then the batterie. Each stage hotter, each stage more precise. The final crystallization that turned liquid gold into white crystals worth their weight in actual gold.
But Sarah had learned something the white men didn't know. Something she'd discovered by accident 5 years ago and kept secret ever since. She'd been cleaning out the furnace, shoveling ash into barrels, when some of it spilled into a batch of nearly finished syrup. She'd panicked, thinking she'd ruined it, that the beating would be severe. But Master Belmont was away that week, and the overseer never checked the final product closely. Sarah boiled it anyway, praying the ash would somehow disappear. It didn't ruin the sugar. It did something far more interesting. The batch never crystallized. It stayed liquid, thick and dark, useless for selling as refined sugar. Sarah dumped it with the waste, her heart pounding, and told no one. But she remembered. Oh, she remembered. And over the years, in quiet moments, she'd experimented. Different ashes, different timings, different amounts. She learned exactly which wood, burned at exactly which temperature, mixed in at exactly which stage, would ruin a batch without changing the taste or color until it was too late. She learned how to make sugar that would never become sugar. The winter turned to spring. The masks remained. 3 more people wore them now. An old man named Joseph, who'd been caught with a piece of cane in his cabin. A young woman, pregnant, who'd fainted in the fields from hunger and fallen into the cane rows. A boy of 12, who'd given his little sister a piece of cane to chew on. Sarah watched Master Belmont walk through the quarters at night, checking for contraband. She watched him count every stick of cane brought to the mill. She watched him obsess over every pound of sugar produced, trying to recover from his financial losses. He was desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. The spring of 1855 brought the kind of growing season sugar planters dream about. Perfect rain, perfect sun. The cane grew tall and thick, stalks bursting with juice. Master Belmont brought in every able body for the harvest. He worked them 18 hours a day. He promised bonuses to the overseers if they exceeded last year's production. This crop, he told everyone, would save the plantation. This crop would restore his fortune. Sarah stood in the boiling house and watched the cane arrive by the wagon load. She tended her kettles with the same careful precision she always had. She smiled at the overseers. She worked harder than ever, showing up before dawn, staying past midnight. And she waited. Because Sarah knew something they didn't. She knew exactly when a crucial moment would arrive. She knew exactly which batch would matter most. And she knew exactly how to destroy everything they'd worked for. This is the story of a woman with 3 fingers and a heart full of rage brought down an empire. This is the story of sweet revenge. The boiling house stood separate from the other plantation buildings, a necessary isolation because of the heat and the danger. 4 massive copper kettles sat over brick furnaces, flames roaring day and night during harvest season. The temperature inside reached 130 degrees. The air was thick enough to choke on, heavy with steam and the cloying sweetness of boiling cane juice. Sarah had learned to love it here. Not the heat or the danger, but the solitude. The white men rarely stayed long. Too hot, too uncomfortable. They'd check the production numbers and leave. That gave her freedom. That gave her power they didn't even know she had. She wasn't alone in the boiling house, though. There was Clara, 23 years old, quick hands and a quicker tongue. Clara had been born on the plantation, daughter of the head field hand and a woman who died giving birth. She was strong, smart, and one of the few people Sarah trusted. Then there was old Moses, 60 if he was a day, half blind but with an instinct for temperature that was almost supernatural. He could tell you within 2 degrees how hot a kettle was just by listening to the bubble and hiss. They worked together like a machine. Clara feeding the cane juice into the grand, Moses managing the furnace temperatures, Sarah moving the liquid through the stages, skimming, testing, deciding when to transfer to the next kettle. But there was a 4th person in the boiling house that season. His name was Daniel. Daniel was new to Belmont Plantation, purchased from an estate sale in Mississippi just before harvest. He was young, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and an education he tried to hide. Sarah learned he could read and write, dangerous skills for an enslaved man. Master Belmont had bought him specifically for the boiling house, paying extra because Daniel claimed experience with sugar production. Sarah didn't trust him. Couldn't say why exactly. Maybe it was how he watched everything too carefully. Maybe it was how he asked too many questions. Or maybe it was just that look in his eyes, like he was calculating something, always calculating. "You've been doing this a long time," Daniel said one morning in March, watching Sarah skim impurities from the flambeau kettle. His voice was educated, carefully neutral. 16 years, Sarah replied, not looking at him. "Master Belmont speaks highly of your work, says you're the best sugar maker in Louisiana." Sarah snorted. "Master Belmont speaks highly of his horses, too. Doesn't make them human." Daniel was quiet for a moment, then leaned closer. "I meant it as a compliment. You clearly know things, secrets of the trade." There it was, that calculating look. Sarah felt warning bells ring in her head. "Ain't no secrets," she said flatly. "Just experience. You'll learn if you stay long enough." "I hope to stay very long," Daniel said, and something in his tone made Sarah's skin prickle. The harvest intensified through April. The fields were chaos of activity, cutting crews working in brutal shifts. The cane came to the mill faster than they could process it. Master Belmont was everywhere, shouting orders, checking production logs, his desperation growing more visible each day. And then the first betrayal happened. It was Clara who told Sarah. They were alone in the boiling house, Moses having gone to fetch more wood. Clara's voice was barely a whisper over the roar of the furnaces. "Sarah, I need to tell you something about Elijah." Elijah was Clara's brother, 19 years old, working the cutting crews. Sarah had known him since birth, a good boy, loyal, or so she'd thought.
"What about Elijah?" Sarah asked, stirring the syrup in the battery kettle. "He's been talking to Master Belmont, trading information for extra rations, for a promise that he won't wear the mask no matter what." Sarah's hand stilled on the wooden paddle. "What kind of information?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Who's stealing cane? Who's working slow on purpose? Who's hiding food in their cabins? He got Joseph put in the mask, Sarah, his own uncle. He told Master Belmont that Joseph had a whole stalk hidden under his bed." The rage that filled Sarah was cold, not hot, ice in her veins. "Your brother is helping them starve us? I didn't know until yesterday. I confronted him and he said he's doing what he has to do to survive, that everyone has to look out for themselves now. That Master Belmont promised him he'd never be sold if he keeps providing information." Sarah looked at Clara's tear-stained face and felt her heart break a little more. The masters didn't just control their bodies, they turned them against each other, made them betray their own blood for scraps. This was the real cruelty, not the whips or the masks, but this, the way they made them destroy each other. "Does anyone else know?" Sarah asked. "Just you. I couldn't tell anyone else. They'd kill him, Sarah. I know what he's doing is wrong, but he's my brother." Sarah pulled Clara into a brief, fierce embrace. "You did right telling me. We'll figure this out." But even as she said it, Sarah was thinking about her plan, about the sabotage she'd been carefully preparing. And now there was a spy among them, someone who might notice something unusual, someone who might report it. That night, Sarah barely slept. She lay in her cabin, listening to the sounds of the quarters. Somewhere nearby, a baby cried. Further off, someone was singing, voice low and mournful. The same songs they'd been singing for generations. Songs about freedom, songs about going home. Sarah thought about her own children. Thomas, sold to a plantation in Alabama when he was 12. She'd never seen him again. That was 18 years ago. Leah, sold to pay a gambling debt when she was 15, gone to Texas. Sarah didn't even know if she was alive. And baby James, her youngest, taken when he was just 7, sold to a trader heading to Mississippi. Sarah had screamed that day, screamed until her voice was gone. Master Belmont had her whipped for it, 20 lashes for disturbing the peace. The masters took everything, your children, your dignity, your humanity, and now through people like Elijah, they took your trust in each other. But they couldn't take her knowledge. They couldn't take what was in her head, the secret of the ash, the perfect timing, the exact amount. That was hers. That was her power. The next morning, Daniel approached her again. "Sarah, I've been watching the crystallization process," he said, his tone casual but his eyes intense. "Sometimes the sugar sets perfectly. Sometimes it's a bit soft. Is there a trick to it? Something about the final heating?" Every instinct Sarah had screamed danger. "Temperature and timing, that's all. Moses knows the temperatures better than anyone. But you make the decisions about when to transfer between kettles. There must be some skill to that, some knowledge. Perhaps you could teach me." Sarah met his eyes directly. "You'll learn by watching, same as I did." If you're enjoying this story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to come, and you won't want to miss what happens next.
May brought the intense heat that made the boiling house feel like standing inside the sun itself. The cane harvest reached its peak, and Master Belmont drove everyone harder. 18-hour days became 20. The masks were everywhere now. 7 people wore them, walking skeletons who could barely swallow water, let alone food. Sarah watched it all with that cold rage growing in her chest. But she had to be careful, more careful than ever, because Daniel was watching her, and somewhere in the quarters, Elijah was watching everyone, ready to trade information for his own survival. It was Moses who first noticed Daniel's real interest. The old man pulled Sarah aside one evening, his voice gravelly with exhaustion. "That new one, Daniel, he ain't what he seems." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, though she'd suspected the same. "He's too educated, too knowing, and he's always writing in that little book he thinks nobody sees, writing down numbers, production numbers." Moses's clouded eyes fixed on Sarah. "I think Master Belmont planted him here to watch us, to make sure nobody's stealing or slowing down." Sarah felt her blood run cold. A spy wasn't just watching for theft. A spy might notice anything unusual, any deviation from normal production, any strange additions to the kettles. "How sure are you?" she whispered. "Sure enough. I seen him talking to the overseer late at night, seen him go into the big house twice when he thought nobody was looking." Moses touched her arm with his gnarled hand. "Whatever you thinking about doing, girl, you best be extra careful now." So Moses knew, or suspected. Sarah should have realized he would. The old man missed nothing when it came to the sugar-making process. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah said carefully. Moses smiled, showing gaps where teeth used to be. "Course you don't, but if you did know what I was talking about, I'd tell you to be smart, be patient, wait for the right moment, and I'd tell you that this old man's eyes might be failing, but he can still tend a furnace, and he can still look the other way when needed." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Moses." "Hush now. We don't need to speak more on it. Just know you ain't alone, and when the time comes, I'll make sure them fires burn exactly how they need to burn." That conversation changed everything. Sarah wasn't alone in this, but it also meant the stakes were higher. If Moses was caught helping her, they'd kill him, no question. An old man had no value to Master Belmont, and rebellion, even quiet rebellion, was punished with death. The betrayals continued.
Elijah's information led to more people being punished. A woman named Ruth was whipped for hiding a sweet potato. 2 children were separated from their mother and sent to work in the fields because Elijah reported that she was teaching them letters using charcoal and boards. The quarters grew tense. People stopped trusting each other. Eyes watched eyes. Everyone wondered who might be next to trade information for safety. Clara was falling apart. Sarah could see it in how the young woman's hands shook, how she jumped at every sound. The guilt of knowing what her brother was doing, of keeping it secret, was eating her alive.
"I can't do this anymore," Clara whispered one afternoon, tears streaming down her face. "Every time he gets someone hurt, it's like I'm doing it too, by not telling anyone, by protecting him." Sarah pulled her behind the big flambeau kettle, where the steam and noise would hide their conversation. "Listen to me. You telling folks about Elijah won't stop 'em. It'll just get 'em killed. And then what? You think Master Belmont won't find another spy? There's always someone desperate enough, scared enough to trade their soul for a little safety." "So what do we do?" Clara's voice was desperate. "We survive, we wait, and we trust that justice comes, even if it takes time." Sarah gripped Clara's shoulders. "Your brother made his choice. You made yours. You told me, and that was brave. Now we watch him. We know what he is, and we make sure he don't learn nothing important." But the truth was, Sarah was starting to worry. The perfect moment for her sabotage was approaching. The largest harvest was coming in the next 2 weeks. Master Belmont had arranged buyers from New Orleans, big merchants willing to pay premium prices for high-quality sugar. He'd borrowed money based on projected sales. Everything depended on this crop. It was perfect, too perfect, and that meant everyone would be watching extra carefully. Daniel's questions became more pointed. "Sarah, I notice sometimes the final crystallization is faster than other times. What causes that variation?" "Humidity in the air," Sarah lied smoothly. "Can't control the weather." "And the color variation? Sometimes the sugar is pure white, sometimes slightly darker. Temperature of the final boil, hotter burns the sugar slightly." He was probing, testing her knowledge, looking for inconsistencies. Sarah had to be perfect in her answers. One wrong word, and he'd know something was off. The masks were taking their toll. Joseph died in his sleep, his body simply given up after 3 weeks of near starvation. They buried him in the field designated for enslaved people. No marker, no ceremony beyond what they could do in secret after dark. Master Belmont didn't even acknowledge his death, just assigned his cabin to someone else. That night, Sarah stood outside her cabin and looked up at the stars. The same stars her ancestors had seen in Africa, the same stars that guided people north to freedom, the same stars that would still be there long after Master Belmont and his plantation would dust. She thought about her plan, about the risk, about what would happen if she was caught. They'd kill her, certainly, probably torture her first, make an example. They might kill Moses, too, and Clara if they suspected she knew. The whole quarters might suffer for one woman's rebellion. Was it worth it? Could she live with that responsibility? But then she thought about Marcus, the 14-year-old boy with the mask, his eyes hollow with hunger. She thought about Joseph's unmarked grave. She thought about her children, stolen and sold. She thought about every person wearing iron on their face, being starved for the crime of being hungry. And then she knew, yes, it was worth it, because sometimes destruction was the only form of justice available. Sometimes the only power you had was the power to take away what they valued most, their profit, their precious white gold, their fortune built on blood and suffering. Sarah would take it all away, and she would smile while doing it.
The first week of June brought news that made Master Belmont practically dance with joy. The merchants from New Orleans confirmed their visit. They'd arrive on June 15th to inspect the sugar and finalize the purchase. The price they were offering was extraordinary, nearly double the normal rate, because sugar was scarce this year and demand was high. Master Belmont gathered all the overseers and key workers, including Sarah. She stood at the back of the big house kitchen while he laid out his plans, his face flushed with excitement and whiskey. "This is it," he announced. "This sale will clear my debts and put us back on top. I want every person working at maximum capacity. The cane-cutting crews will work dawn to midnight. The mill will run continuously. And you, Sarah, you and your crew will produce the finest sugar this plantation has ever made. Pure white, perfect crystals. I want those New Orleans merchants to be amazed." Sarah nodded respectfully, her face showing nothing but dutiful agreement. Inside, her heart raced. This was it. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. The timeline was perfect. The big harvest would come in starting June 10th, 5 days of cutting, crushing, and initial boiling. The final crystallization batches, the ones the merchants would inspect, would be completed on June 14th, 1 day before the merchants arrived. Sarah had exactly 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to gather the right ash in the right quantities without anyone noticing, 2 weeks to plan every detail so perfectly that when the disaster struck, it would look like nothing more than terrible luck. But Daniel was watching, always watching. She caught him one evening going through the ash barrels, running his fingers through the powder, even tasting it. Sarah's heart nearly stopped. Had he figured it out? Was he testing for contamination? "What are you doing?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. Daniel straightened quickly, almost guiltily. "Just curious about the ash disposal process. I noticed you're particular about which barrels get used for what purpose." "Different woods burn different. Some ash is good for soap making, some we use in the gardens. Can't waste nothing on a plantation, you know that." "Of course," Daniel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're very efficient, Sarah. Master Belmont is fortunate to have you." After he left, Sarah's hands shook so badly she had to sit down. He was suspicious, maybe not of sabotage specifically, but of something. She'd have to be more careful, much more careful. Clara noticed Sarah's tension. "What's wrong?" she whispered during a rare moment alone. "Daniel's getting too curious. We need to distract him somehow." "How?" Sarah thought for a moment, an idea forming. It was risky, but it might work. "Your brother Elijah, he's always looking for information to trade, right?" "Yes," Clara said bitterly. "What if we gave him some? Nothing important, just enough to keep Master Belmont and the overseers focused somewhere else for the next 2 weeks." Clara's eyes widened. "You want to use Elijah?" "I want to keep everyone's attention away from the boiling house. Can you think of some harmless information Elijah could trade? Something that would cause a fuss but not actually hurt anyone we care about?" Clara bit her lip, thinking. "There's those new workers Master Belmont bought last month from Virginia. They keep to themselves mostly. Elijah's been trying to get information on them, but they won't talk to him. If I told him I heard they were planning to run, Master Belmont would focus all his attention on watching them."
It was cruel, using innocent people as decoys. But Sarah was past the point of perfect morality. This was about survival, about striking back the only way she could. Tell him. Make it sound convincing but not too specific. Just enough to keep Master Belmont paranoid and distracted. The plan worked better than Sarah expected. Within 2 days, Master Belmont had increased patrols around the quarters. The Virginia workers found themselves under constant surveillance. The overseers were too busy watching for a potential escape attempt to pay attention to the routine operations of the boiling house. Daniel, too, seemed caught up in the drama. Sarah watched him questioning people, taking notes, probably compiling a report for Master Belmont. Good, let him focus on that. Meanwhile, Sarah prepared. She selected the perfect wood, cedar and oak mixed in specific proportions. She burned it in the dead of night in her cabin's fireplace, collecting the ash in a hidden cloth bag.
She tested small amounts, timing exactly when in the crystallization process it needed to be added. Too early, and the effect was obvious. Too late, and it didn't work. But at precisely the right moment, when the syrup was at 230 degrees and just beginning to form crystal structure, a handful of this special ash would bind with the sugar molecules in a way that prevented full crystallization. The syrup would look perfect, test perfect, but it would never fully harden. It would remain a thick, unusable sludge. Worthless. Moses helped without being asked. He made sure the furnace temperatures were exact when Sarah needed them. He created small diversions when Sarah needed privacy, and he never, ever asked questions. One night, about a week before the crucial harvest, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat outside her cabin listening to the night sounds. Crickets, distant frogs, the occasional cry of a night bird, and underneath it all, the low murmur of people in other cabins, talking, crying, praying. An old woman named Mama Ruth came and sat beside her. Mama Ruth was ancient, maybe 70, though nobody knew for sure. She'd been on Belmont Plantation longer than anyone living. She'd seen 3 generations of Belmonts come and go. She'd survived things Sarah couldn't even imagine. "You plannin' something, child," Mama Ruth said softly. It wasn't a question. Sarah didn't answer. "I can see it in your eyes, that look. I seen it before in others who decided they'd had enough." Mama Ruth patted Sarah's hand with her own gnarled fingers. "I ain't asking what. Don't need to know. But I'll tell you this. Whatever you do, you make sure it counts, because there ain't no second chances. They catch you, they'll kill you slow. Make an example. You understand?" "I understand," Sarah whispered. "Good. Then I'll say this too. Sometimes one person's courage gives everyone else hope, even if that person pays the price, especially if that person pays the price. You remember that when the time comes." Mama Ruth stood slowly, joints creaking. "I'll be praying for you, Sarah. Praying you succeed, praying you survive, but mostly praying you know you ain't alone, even if it feels that way." After Mama Ruth left, Sarah cried. Not from fear, though she was terrified. Not from doubt, though she had plenty. She cried from gratitude, because in a world designed to isolate them, to turn them against each other, there were still moments of connection, still people who understood, still love, somehow, in the midst of hell. The next morning, she woke with renewed determination. 9 days until the critical harvest. 9 days to make sure every detail was perfect. 9 days until she changed everything.
June 10th arrived with oppressive heat and humidity that made the air feel solid. The cutting crews moved into the fields before dawn, machetes flashing in the early light. The cane this year was exceptional, stalks thick as a man's arm, dripping with juice. Master Belmont walked among the workers, shouting encouragement and threats in equal measure. In the boiling house, Sarah prepared for the longest 5 days of her life. Clara and Moses took their positions, and Daniel, always Daniel, watched everything with those calculating eyes. The first wagon loads of cane arrived by mid-morning. The crushing began, juice flowing into the collection vats. Sarah started the fires under the kettles. The familiar routine began, the rhythm she'd known for 16 years. Feed the juice into the grand, heat it, skim the scum, transfer to the flambeau, heat higher, skim again, transfer to the sirope, higher still, then to the batterie for the final concentration before crystallization. Everything had to appear normal, perfect, routine. But Sarah had her special ash hidden in a small cloth pouch tied under her skirt. When the moment came, when Daniel and the overseers were distracted, when Moses had the temperature exactly right, she would strike. The first 2 days passed without incident. Batch after batch of perfect sugar crystallized in the cooling troughs. Master Belmont visited twice a day, examining the product with greedy eyes. Beautiful, he kept saying. Absolutely beautiful. The merchants will pay top dollar for this quality. Sarah smiled and nodded and made sure every batch was flawless. She needed him confident, unsuspecting. She needed him to lower his guard. On the third day, something unexpected happened. One of the Virginia workers, a young man named Peter, actually did try to run. He was caught within hours, dragged back, and whipped in front of everyone as an example. 50 lashes. He didn't survive the night. The quarters were silent with grief and fear, but Sarah felt a terrible gratitude that her deception had accidentally predicted a real event. Now Master Belmont would never suspect that the initial rumor had been planted. He believed his surveillance had prevented a larger escape attempt. He was pleased with himself and distracted.
Daniel, too, was caught up in the aftermath of the escape attempt. Sarah overheard him reporting to the overseer that he'd suspected Peter all along, that the man had been asking too many questions about the property boundaries. Daniel was building his own credibility as a spy, trying to make himself valuable. Good. Let him focus on that. June 13th arrived. Tomorrow would be the day. The final batches, the ones destined for the merchant's inspection, would be processed tomorrow. Sarah had planned it all carefully. She would sabotage the last 6 batches, the ones that would be shown as the premium product. The earlier batches, already crystallized and stored, would remain perfect. That way, when the merchants arrived and found ruined product, it would look like something had gone wrong at the last minute. A tragic accident, bad timing, not deliberate sabotage. That night, Sarah barely slept. She went over every detail in her mind. The timing, the amount of ash, the method of adding it without being seen. Moses would create a distraction at the crucial moment, she knew. Clara would be positioned to block Daniel's view if needed. Everything was ready. But fear gnawed at her. What if she was caught? What if Daniel saw? What if the ash didn't work as planned? What if Master Belmont somehow figured it out? And then there was the bigger question, the one that kept her awake. What would happen to everyone else after? Would Master Belmont take his rage out on all of them? Would people die because of what she was about to do? She thought about Peter, whipped to death just days ago. She thought about Joseph, starved by the mask. She thought about her children, lost forever. She thought about every person in the quarters, their lives ground down to nothing by a system that viewed them as property. And she thought about Master Belmont's face when he discovered his fortune had turned to useless sludge, the rage, the despair, the financial ruin. That image gave her strength. June 14th dawned clear and hot, the final day of harvest. The cutting crews brought in the last of the cane, the best cane, saved for last. The juice was exceptionally sweet, the sugar content high, perfect conditions for perfect sugar, or for perfect sabotage. Sarah arrived at the boiling house before dawn. She checked her hidden pouch of ash, still there, still dry. She said a prayer, though she wasn't sure she believed in a God who would allow what happened on plantations like this. But maybe, just maybe, there was some force in the universe that believed in justice. Clara arrived next, her eyes meeting Sarah's. A silent understanding passed between them. Clara knew today was the day. She didn't know exactly what Sarah planned, but she knew something was coming. Moses shuffled in, his blind eyes somehow seeing everything that mattered. He touched Sarah's shoulder briefly as he passed, a blessing, an acknowledgement, a promise of help. And then Daniel arrived, earlier than usual, his eyes sharp and alert. Big day. The batches we make today will determine everything. Master Belmont's entire future depends on the sugar we produce in the next 12 hours. No pressure, then, Sarah said dryly, and Daniel laughed.
But inside, Sarah's heart pounded, because he was right. Everything depended on today, not just Master Belmont's future, but her own, the quarters, the possibility of some small justice in an unjust world. The fires were lit. The first juice flowed into the grand kettle. The process began, and Sarah waited for her moment, knowing that by sunset, nothing would ever be the same.
The boiling house filled with steam and heat as the day progressed. Batch after batch processed normally. Sarah forced herself to be patient. The critical batches wouldn't begin until afternoon, when the final loads of the best cane were crushed. Those were the ones Master Belmont would show the merchants. Those were the ones that had to fail. Around noon, the overseer came through, checking the production logs. "How many batches completed?" he demanded. 42 so far," Daniel answered before Sarah could speak. He'd been keeping meticulous notes all morning. "All high quality. The crystallization is exceptional." The overseer nodded approvingly. "Master Belmont wants the final 8 batches to be perfect. Those are the showcase batches. The merchants will judge everything based on those. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Sarah said. "We'll make sure they're the finest sugar Louisiana has ever seen." Oh, they would be memorable, Sarah thought, just not in the way Master Belmont hoped. The afternoon batches began at 2 o'clock. The best cane, the sweetest juice. Sarah watched it flow into the grand kettle, golden and thick. Her hands moved through the familiar motions, skimming, testing, transferring, but her mind was racing, calculating. Batch 43, normal. Let it crystallize perfectly. Batch 44, normal, perfect crystals. Daniel was watching closely, but not suspiciously. He seemed satisfied that everything was routine. Batch 45 began at 3:30. This was it, the first one she would sabotage. Sarah's mouth went dry. Her hands wanted to shake, but she forced them steady. The juice moved through the stages, grand to flambeau, to sirop, to batterie. Sarah tested the temperature, 228 degrees, almost there. She needed exactly 230 degrees, the moment when the sugar molecules began to align into crystal structure. That's when the ash would bind and prevent full crystallization. Moses, tending the furnace, caught her eye. He nodded slightly, ready. Clara, feeding cane juice into the grand, positioned herself between Daniel and Sarah's workstation, not obviously blocking, just naturally in the way. 230 degrees. Moses suddenly shouted, "Daniel, this furnace needs more wood. Quick, before the temperature drops." Daniel, ever eager to prove his usefulness, rushed to help Moses, his back turned to Sarah's kettle. Sarah's hand moved to the pouch under her skirt, drew out a handful of ash, dropped it into the batterie kettle, stirred it in with the wooden paddle. The ash disappeared into the thick golden syrup, invisible. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her chest, but her face remained calm, focused. Daniel returned with wood. Moses praised his quickness. The moment passed. The sabotaged batch moved to the cooling troughs. It looked perfect, golden, thick, exactly as it should. The ash would take 6 to 8 hours to fully prevent crystallization. By then, it would be too late to save it. 1 down, 7 to go. Batch 46. Sarah's hands were steadier now. The fear transformed into cold focus. She knew she could do this. Moses created another distraction, this time dropping a tool near the furnace. In the moment of commotion, Sarah added the ash, quick, clean, invisible. But then Daniel asked, "Sarah, I noticed you stirring that batch longer than usual. Is there a reason?" Ice flooded Sarah's veins. Had he seen? Did he suspect? "Different concentration in this batch," Sarah said calmly. "Thicker juice needs more stirring to ensure even heating. Otherwise you get hot spots and the sugar burns."
Daniel studied her face. Sarah met his eyes steadily, showing nothing but professional concern for the quality of the product.
Makes sense, Daniel finally said, though his eyes lingered on her a moment longer. Close. Too close. Batches 47 and 48 went smoother. Sarah varied her methods slightly each time, making sure the ash addition looked like normal stirring or testing. Moses and Clara worked together seamlessly, creating natural moments of distraction. But the tension was unbearable. Every second, Sarah expected Daniel to shout, to point, to expose her. Every movement felt watched. Every breath felt dangerous. Batch 49. Just 3 more to go. Master Belmont arrived for his afternoon inspection just as Batch 49 entered the battery stage. Sarah's timing was thrown off. She couldn't add the ash with him standing right there, watching. "Show me the finished product," Master Belmont demanded. Sarah walked him to the cooling troughs where batches 43 and 44 sat, crystallized and perfect. Master Belmont ran his fingers through the white crystals, lifting them to the light. "Beautiful," he breathed. "This is quality. This is what will save us." If only he knew that just a few troughs away, batches 45 and 46 were already ruined, the ash working its invisible poison, preventing the crystallization he was admiring. "The final batches are processing now," Sarah said. "Should be ready for final cooling in about 2 hours." "I want to be here when they finish," Master Belmont said. "I want to see the last batch personally." No, 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 no. Sarah felt panic rise in her throat. How could she sabotage the final batches with Master Belmont watching? "Sir, it gets very hot and uncomfortable in here during final processing. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable waiting in the house. We can send word the moment the last batch is cooling." Master Belmont hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but I want a sample of each final batch brought to me tonight. I want to examine them personally before the merchants arrive tomorrow." After he left, Sarah caught Daniel's eye. Had he just helped her? Why would he do that? "You looked like you were about to panic," Daniel said quietly. "If you had, Master Belmont would have wondered why. Better he leaves. Better we work without distractions." Sarah didn't know what to say. Was this a trick? A test? "Thank you," she managed. Daniel smiled, but there was something sad in his eyes, something Sarah couldn't quite read. Batch 49. With shaking hands, Sarah added the ash. Then 50. Then 51. Just one more. Batch 52. The final batch. The one Master Belmont specifically wanted to see. Sarah stood over the battery kettle at 230 degrees, the pouch of ash in her hand, and she hesitated. This was it, the point of no return. Once she sabotaged this last batch, the deed was done. There would be no going back, no explaining it away, no claiming accident. 8 batches ruined in sequence would be obvious sabotage. She would be caught, questioned, tortured, killed. Was she ready to die for this? Sarah thought of her children's faces, fading now in memory. She thought of Joseph's unmarked grave. She thought of Marcus and the mask. She thought of every person in the quarters, ground down day after day, their humanity stolen, their lives worth nothing to the men who owned them. Yes, she was ready. Sarah dropped the final handful of ash into the kettle and stirred it in. It was done. "Are you going to tell him?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the terror flooding through her. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "No." "What?" "I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to report it. I'm not going to stop you." Daniel stood and moved closer. "Whatever you did to those batches, whatever's going to happen tomorrow when the merchants arrive, I'm going to say I saw nothing. I knew nothing. I'm going to let it happen." Sarah couldn't breathe. "Why?" "Because maybe it's time I stopped surviving and started living with myself. Because what they're doing to us, to all of us, is evil, and I've been complicit. I've been helping them do it.
Daniel's voice cracked. "I have a daughter, Sarah. Did you know that? She's 6 years old. I haven't seen her in 2 years. She's on a plantation in Mississippi. The master there offered to sell her to me for $300. $300 for my own child." Tears streamed down Daniel's face. "I've been saving, taking every extra ration, every small coin, trying to get to $300, thinking if I just cooperate enough, spy well enough, make myself valuable enough, maybe Master Belmont will help me buy her. But you know what I realized today?" "What?" Sarah whispered. "I realized I've been selling my soul for $300 I'll never have. I've been betraying my people for a hope that will never come true. And even if I somehow got my daughter back, what kind of father would I be? A man who saved one child by helping enslave hundreds of others?" Daniel wiped his eyes. "So no, I'm not reporting you. Whatever you've done, I hope it works. I hope it destroys him. And when they ask me questions, I'll lie. I'll say everything seemed normal. I'll protect you if I can." Sarah didn't know what to say. She'd spent weeks seeing Daniel as an enemy, a threat, and now here he was, broken and crying and offering his help. "They'll know you should have seen something. They'll punish you too." "I know, but at least I'll deserve it this time. At least I'll be suffering for the right reasons." Daniel looked at her directly. "What did you do to the sugar?" Sarah hesitated, then decided he'd earned the truth. "There's an ash. Mixed in at the right moment, it prevents crystallization. The sugar will never harden. It'll stay liquid, worthless." Daniel's eyes widened. "All 8 batches?" "All 8. A slow smile spread across Daniel's face. "Master Belmont borrowed $20,000 based on this sale. If it falls through, if there's no sugar to sell, the bank will foreclose. He'll lose everything." "I know," Sarah said. Daniel started laughing, not cruel laughter, but the kind of laughter that comes from tension breaking, from impossible hope becoming real. "You're going to destroy him. You're actually going to do it." "If it works," Sarah said cautiously. "It will work. I'll make sure it works." Daniel's face became serious. "I'll create confusion tomorrow. I'll report seeing someone suspicious near the boiling house tonight. I'll make them think maybe someone tampered with the batches after we left. I'll point suspicion away from you." "Daniel, let me help. Please, let me do this one good thing." Sarah studied his face and saw genuine determination. Maybe he was telling the truth, maybe this was a trick, but either way, she'd already committed. The deed was done. "Okay," Sarah said quietly. "Help if you can. But Daniel, if this goes wrong, if they catch us, you tell them it was all me. You tell them you knew nothing. You protect yourself." "No promises, but I appreciate the thought." They stood together in the boiling house, 2 people who'd been enemies hours before, now conspirators in rebellion. Outside, night had fallen completely. In the quarters, people were settling in for sleep, unaware that tomorrow their world might change. In the cooling troughs, 8 batches of sugar sat, looking perfect, hiding their poison. And in Sarah's heart, for the first time in years, something that felt almost like hope began to bloom.
Morning came too quickly. Sarah hadn't slept at all, lying in her cabin listening to every sound, expecting at any moment to hear footsteps coming for her. But the night passed quietly. Dawn broke hot and clear. The merchants were scheduled to arrive at 10 o'clock. Sarah dressed carefully, her hands surprisingly steady. She'd made her choice. Whatever happened now was beyond her control. The sugar would crystallize or it wouldn't. The sabotage would work or it wouldn't. She would live or she would die. At least she'd acted. At least she'd tried. The quarters were buzzing with activity. Everyone knew today was important, though few understood why. Master Belmont had promised extra rations if the sale went well. People clung to that hope, that small possibility of slightly less hunger. Sarah walked to the boiling house where Clara and Moses waited. Clara's eyes were red from crying. "I heard Daniel talking to the overseer this morning. He reported seeing a suspicious person near here last night. He's trying to help you."
I know, Sarah said. Sarah, what's going to happen today? Clara's voice shook. Hopefully justice, or at least something close to it. At 9 o'clock, Master Belmont arrived with the overseer and 2 other white men Sarah didn't recognize, probably his creditors, come to see the sugar that would pay off his debts. "Show me the showcase batches," Master Belmont demanded. Sarah led them to the cooling troughs. The batches from yesterday sat there, and Sarah's heart nearly stopped. They looked wrong. The surface was glossy, yes, but not crystalline. More liquid, thick liquid, not solid sugar. Master Belmont frowned. "Why haven't these crystallized yet? It's been 16 hours. "Sometimes the cooling process takes longer, sir," Sarah said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Especially with high sugar content. The concentration might be so good that crystallization is slower." It was a believable lie. Master Belmont wanted to believe it. He needed to believe it. "We'll wait, then, but I want these perfect when the merchants arrive. Stir them, test them, do whatever you need to do." Sarah went through the motions. She stirred the thick syrup, knowing it would never crystallize. She tested the temperature, the consistency. She performed the rituals of sugar-making, while the poison she'd introduced did its invisible work. 10 o'clock arrived, then 10:30. Still no merchants. Master Belmont paced, his anxiety visible. The creditors watched him with vulture eyes. At 11, a carriage finally arrived. 2 well-dressed men stepped out, merchants from New Orleans. They looked prosperous and bored, men who'd seen countless sugar samples and weren't easily impressed. Master Belmont practically ran to greet them, ushering them toward the big house for refreshments first. Sarah breathed a small sigh of relief. More time for the full extent of the disaster to become obvious. By noon, the showcase batches were clearly wrong. Even Master Belmont couldn't deny it anymore. The syrup remained liquid. Thick, yes. Dark golden, yes, but not crystallizing, not becoming the white sugar that commanded premium prices. "I don't understand," Master Belmont kept saying. "This has never happened before. Sarah, what went wrong?" Sarah examined the batches with professional concern. "I don't know, sir. Everything was done exactly as always. Temperature, timing, everything was perfect." Daniel stepped forward. "Sir, I mentioned earlier that I saw someone suspicious near the boiling house last night. Maybe someone tampered with the batches." One of the creditors laughed harshly. "Convenient excuse. More likely your sugar maker doesn't know what she's doing." "Sarah's made perfect sugar for 16 years, Master Belmont shouted. "Then why is this batch ruined?" the creditor shot back. The merchants arrived at the boiling house at 12:30. They examined the failed batches with professional detachment. "This is unacceptable," the lead merchant said. "We were promised premium white sugar. This is molasses, worthless for our purposes." "But the earlier batches," Master Belmont was desperate now. "Look at the 42 batches from earlier in the week. They're perfect." The merchants examined the earlier batches. They were indeed perfect, white, crystalline, exactly what was wanted. But there weren't nearly enough. "We need quantity as well as quality," the merchant said. "Our buyers in Europe have ordered specific amounts. These 42 batches are perhaps a quarter of what we agreed to purchase." "I can make more." Master Belmont was sweating profusely despite the heat. "Give me another week. We'll produce more." "The ship leaves in 5 days. We have other suppliers waiting. I'm sorry, Mr. Belmont, but this sale is off." The merchants left without another word. Master Belmont stood frozen, his color drained from his face. One of the creditors spoke, his voice cold. "Richard, you promised this sale would cover your debts. Without it, we're calling in your notes. You have 30 days to pay $20,000 or we foreclose." "I don't have $20,000. That's why I needed this sale." "Then you'll lose the plantation, the land, everything." The creditors walked away, already calculating how to divide the property. Master Belmont turned on Sarah, his face twisted with rage. "You did this! Somehow you did this!" "Sir, I don't know what happened. 16 years of perfect sugar, and suddenly, on the most important day, everything fails? Someone sabotaged this. Someone ruined me." His hand moved to the pistol at his belt. The overseer grabbed his arm. "Richard, you can't just shoot your sugar maker. We need to investigate, figure out what actually happened." Daniel stepped forward. "Sir, I saw someone last night, one of the new workers from Virginia. I should have reported it more urgently, but I didn't think." "Which one?" Master Belmont's rage needed a target. Daniel hesitated just a moment too long. Sarah saw him wrestling with himself. He was about to name an innocent person to save her. "No," Sarah said quietly. Everyone turned to her. "No one tampered with the batches last night, because I did it yesterday, during the processing. I added ash to prevent crystallization. I sabotaged the sugar deliberately." The silence that followed was absolute. Master Belmont's face went from red to purple. "You... what?" "I ruined your sugar. I destroyed your sale. I cost you everything." Sarah stood straight, meeting his eyes. "And I'd do it again."
Master Belmont drew his pistol. His hand shook with rage. "You destroyed me, my family, everything we built." "Everything you built?" Sarah's voice was ice. "You built it on stolen bodies, stolen lives, stolen children. You took my 3 babies from me and sold them like cattle. You starve people until they're skeletons. You lock masks on their faces and watch them die slowly. What you built deserves to be destroyed." "You ungrateful—" Master Belmont's finger moved to the trigger. Clara screamed. Moses moved to intervene. Daniel shouted, "No!" But the shot didn't come, because another voice, cold and calculating, cut through the chaos. "Richard, put the gun down." The overseer stood with his own pistol drawn, not pointing at Sarah, but not exactly defending her either. "If you shoot her now, in front of witnesses, you'll hang. Even in Louisiana, there are rules. You need a trial, a confession. Make this legal." Master Belmont lowered the gun slightly, breathing hard. "She confessed. You all heard it." "We did," the overseer agreed, "and she'll hang for it, but properly, legally, after we find out if anyone helped her." His eyes scanned Clara, Moses, and Daniel. "Did anyone help you, Sarah? Tell the truth now, and maybe we show mercy to the others." Sarah saw her moment, her choice. She could name Daniel, who'd been a spy. She could name Clara and Moses, who'd helped her. She could drag them all down with her. Or she could lie. "I worked alone," Sarah said clearly. "Nobody helped me. Nobody knew what I was planning." "That's a lie," Daniel said suddenly. Sarah's heart sank. What was he doing? "I knew," Daniel continued. "I saw her adding something to the kettles. I should have reported it, but I didn't. I'm guilty too." "Daniel, no!" Sarah started. "And I knew," Clara said, stepping forward, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah told me what she was planning. I helped keep watch. I'm guilty." "These children tellin' tales," Moses said, his old voice strong. "But I'm the one who taught Sarah about the ash, years ago. I'm the one who made sure the furnace temperatures were exact. I'm the oldest one here, the most guilty. You want to hang someone, hang me." Sarah wanted to scream at them to stop, to take it back, but she understood. They were choosing their own form of rebellion. They were refusing to let her die alone. Master Belmont looked at them all with hatred. "Fine, you all hang. I'll make an example so severe that no one will ever dare." "Actually, Richard, you won't do anything of the sort." A new voice. Everyone turned to see a man in a fine suit standing in the doorway of the boiling house. He was white, well-dressed, and carried papers. "Who the hell are you?" Master Belmont demanded. "Thomas Waverly, attorney at law.
I represent the bank holding your primary mortgage. Unrolled papers. As of this morning, your creditors have officially called in all debts. You have no authority on this property anymore. By sunset today, this plantation will be under bank control pending auction. That's 30 days from now. They said I had 30 days. They lied, simply. They've been planning to foreclose for weeks. They were just waiting for an excuse. Your failed sale gave them that excuse. You're finished, Richard. Master Belmont seemed to shrink, the rage drained out of him, replaced by the hollow look of a man who'd lost everything. As for these people, Waverly continued, gesturing to Sarah and the others, the bank has no interest in executions. Dead slaves can't be sold to recover debt. They'll be auctioned with the property. No, Master Belmont shouted. They destroyed me. They need to pay. They are property, Richard. Your property. Or rather, the bank's property now. You don't get to destroy assets out of spite. Waverly's tone was cold and practical. Now, I need you to leave the premises today. Take your personal belongings and go. Sarah watched Richard Belmont's face as the reality sank in. He'd lost his plantation, his fortune, his power, and the people he wanted to punish would live, would be sold to someone else, would escape his revenge. It was the most beautiful thing Sarah had ever seen. Master Belmont stumbled out of the boiling house, broken. The overseer followed, already calculating how to find new employment. The creditors went to inventory the property. As for these people, Waverly continued, looking at Sarah and the others, you're lucky. If Belmont still owned you, you'd be dead by now. As it is, you'll be sold in approximately 2 weeks. I suggest you pray for kind buyers. After he left, Sarah, Clara, Moses, and Daniel stood together in the sudden silence. We're alive, Clara whispered. For now, Moses said, but we go to the auction block soon. Might be sold to someone worse than Belmont. Might be sold to someone better, Daniel countered. Might be sold separately. Might be sold to people who work us to death or sell us south. But at least we're alive today. At least we did something that mattered. Sarah thought about her children, sold away years ago. She thought about the possibility of being sold again, sent somewhere far from this place, from the only home she'd known for 36 years. It should have terrified her. Maybe it did, but mostly what she felt was a strange, fierce satisfaction. We broke him, she said softly. We took everything from him, just like he took everything from us. Was it worth it? Clara asked. We might suffer more for this. We might die anyway, just slower. Sarah considered the question. She thought about the 8 batches of ruined sugar, the look on Master Belmont's face when he realized he was destroyed, the fact that he couldn't even have his revenge. Yes, she said finally, it was worth it, because for once we weren't just victims. We fought back. We won. Moses touched her shoulder. Not many folks can say that. Most go their whole lives never striking back. You did, girl. You struck a blow that mattered. Outside, they could hear the banksmen beginning their inventory, counting property, counting people, the normal business of slavery continuing as it always did. But something had changed, something small but real. 4 people standing in a boiling house, knowing they'd resisted, knowing they'd won, even if victory looked a lot like just surviving another day. What happens now? Clara asked. We wait for the auction, Daniel said. We hope for the best, we prepare for the worst. And we remember this, Sarah added. We remember that we did something, that we mattered, that we weren't just property, no matter what the law says. They stood together as the sun began to set, 4 people who'd chosen rebellion in the only way available to them, 4 people who'd paid a price but regretted nothing. In the cooling troughs, the ruined sugar sat, a sweet monument to resistance.
2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. The banksmen ran the plantation with cold efficiency. Work continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Master Belmont was gone, moved to his brother's place in Mobile,
a broken man living on charity. The overseer found work elsewhere. New, temporary overseers watched the enslaved people with indifference rather than cruelty. They were just protecting the bank's investment until auction day. Sarah spent those weeks in the boiling house, still making sugar, because the cane didn't stop growing just because ownership changed. But now she worked without sabotage, without secret plans, just the routine of labor she'd known for 16 years. Elijah, Clara's brother, disappeared the third night after Belmont left. Ran north, people whispered. Nobody missed him much. His betrayals hadn't been forgotten. Daniel worked beside Sarah, quieter now, waiting like everyone else to see what fate the auction would bring. Sometimes Sarah caught him staring into the distance, probably thinking about his daughter in Mississippi. That impossible dream of $300, a family reunion, still haunting him even though he'd given up the spy work that might have made it possible. Clara and Moses continued their work too. The four of them had become a unit, bonded by shared rebellion and shared uncertainty about the future. The auction was set for July 1st, 1855. The night before, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat outside her cabin, looking at the stars, thinking about her life. 50 years old, 36 of those years enslaved, 3 children lost, countless indignities and cruelties endured, and now, possibly, she'd be sold to someone who'd work her until she died. But she'd struck back. She'd destroyed a man who deserved destroying. That was something. Mama Ruth came to sit beside her, just like she had weeks ago. "You scared, child?" "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "Good. Shows you still got hope. Only people who think they got a future worth having are scared of losing it." Mama Ruth patted her hand. "I'll tell you something. I've been enslaved 70-some years, seen a lot of people come and go, and the ones who get remembered, who get talked about in whispers, who give others hope, they the ones who fought back, even once, even if it cost them. I might die tomorrow, or worse. Might not, but either way, you already won the important fight. You proved to yourself you ain't property. You proved you got power even when they try to take it all away. That kind of knowing, that kind of strength, nobody can take from you, not ever." After Mama Ruth left, Sarah cried, not from fear, though she was afraid, not from regret, because she had none. She cried from exhaustion, from the weight of everything, from the knowledge that tomorrow her life would change again and she had no control over how. But she'd had control over the sugar, over Master Belmont's fate, over that one perfect act of rebellion. It would have to be enough. Auction day dawned hot and humid. The enslaved people of Belmont Plantation were lined up in the yard, cleaned and dressed as presentably as possible to maximize sale prices. 247 people, each with a number pinned to their clothing. Sarah was number 178. The buyers came from across Louisiana and beyond, plantation owners looking for field hands, sugar makers seeking experienced workers, some buyers looking for domestic servants, a few slave traders, the worst kind, who'd buy anyone and resell them further south or west where conditions were even more brutal. Sarah stood with her number, watching the auction begin. Families were broken up without thought. A woman screaming as her children were sold to different buyers, an old man who couldn't stop crying when his wife of 40 years went to someone in Texas while he went to Mississippi. This was the other face of slavery, not just the labor and the cruelty, but this, the casual destruction of every human bond, the reduction of people to property that could be divided and dispersed based solely on profit. Sarah's turn came in the afternoon. She stood on the auction block, a white man examining her teeth like a horse, checking her hands, asking about her skills. "Sugar maker," the auctioneer announced. 16 years experience, excellent crystallization specialist, some damage to left hand but still fully capable of all duties. The bidding started at $200, rose to $300, $400. Sarah watched the buyers' faces, trying to guess which one would win her, where she'd end up. At $600, most bidders dropped out. 2 remained. A sugar plantation owner from further south and a well-dressed man Sarah didn't recognize. $650, the plantation owner said. $700, the well-dressed man countered. $750. $1,000. The crowd gasped. $1,000 for a 50-year-old woman with a damaged hand was unusual. The plantation owner shook his head and stepped back. The well-dressed man had won. Sarah was led off the block to her new owner. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought, maybe 40, with kind eyes but a serious expression. "Sarah?" he said quietly. "Yes, sir?" "My name is William Hendricks. I'm a sugar plantation owner, yes, but I'm also complicated. We'll talk more later. For now, I've also purchased your friends, Moses, Clara, and Daniel." Sarah's heart leapt. "You bought all of us?" "I did, and several others who looked like they needed a different situation." Hendricks glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I can't free you. Louisiana law forbids it without special permission, but I can promise you'll be treated as human beings, paid wages you can save, kept together, allowed to maintain your dignity." Sarah didn't know if she could believe him. White men made promises before, but the fact that he'd bought all 4 of them together, that he'd paid extra to keep them from being separated, suggested something different. "Why?" Sarah asked. Hendricks smiled sadly. "Because my mother was enslaved. She was freed before I was born, but she never forgot. She made me promise that if I ever had the means, I'd try to make at least a small difference. So I do what I can. It's not freedom, it's not justice, but maybe it's something." Sarah looked across the yard where Clara, Moses, and Daniel stood together, numbers still pinned to their clothing, but their faces showing cautious hope as Hendricks's assistant led them aside from the other purchases. It wasn't freedom, it wasn't justice, it wasn't even close to enough. But maybe Hendricks was right. Maybe it was something. And maybe, Sarah thought, that was how change happened. Not in one great moment of liberation, but in small acts of rebellion and small acts of mercy, building on each other across time, until someday, somehow, the whole terrible system collapsed. She thought about Master Richard Belmont, broken and penniless. She thought about the 8 batches of ruined sugar. She thought about what Mama Ruth had said, that kind of knowing, that kind of strength, nobody can take from you. "Thank you, Mr. Hendricks," Sarah said quietly. "Thank my mother," he replied. "She's the one who taught me that people are never property, no matter what the law says." As Sarah walked with her new owner toward his wagon, where Clara, Moses, and Daniel waited, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, not hope, really, but something close. The certainty that she'd mattered, that her actions had meaning, that she'd struck back against a system designed to crush her, and she'd won. 50 years old, sold again, still enslaved by law, but not in spirit. Sarah climbed into the wagon beside her friends and allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there could be better days ahead. Behind them, the auction continued. People sold, families broken, the machinery of slavery grinding on as it had for centuries.
But somewhere in Louisiana, 8 batches of ruined sugar sat silent testimony that resistance was possible, that the powerless could sometimes have power, that even in the darkest systems there were cracks where light could enter. Sarah closed her eyes and felt the wagon begin to move, carrying her towards an uncertain future. But she carried something too, the memory of that moment when she dropped ash into boiling sugar and changed everything. The knowledge that she'd fought back, and in the end, maybe that was the sweetest victory of all.